Hey guys, tonight we begin with the slow rattle of wooden wheels over cobblestone, the sour stench of rot drifting on the damp London air, and a knock at the door you pray isn't meant for you. It's 1665, and you are, unfortunately, a plague cart driver, which is to say, you're somewhere between undertaker, garbage man, and unwilling witness to the worst year this city's ever had. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up to the sound of distant bells, low and hollow, echoing off alley walls. Not church bells, no, these are the death bells, rung by bellmen as they walk through the streets calling, "Bring out your dead." You blink into the pale morning gloom, your breath already visible in the chill air of your room, which smells like wet dust and old onions. You're not sick yet, but the question is less if, more when. You roll out of a straw stuffed mattress that crackles and creaks with every movement. Your back complains immediately. Everything complains, really. Your knees, your nose, your conscience. You dress quickly, if you can call it dressing. Your boots are stiff with yesterday's mud. Your coat smells of vinegar and hopelessness. You layer up, not for style, but because it's the closest thing you have to armor. And the day has demands. The cart is waiting outside, already hitched to your faithful companion, a horse named Humphrey, who looks like he deeply regrets being born in the 17th century. You pat his side. He doesn't respond. Probably fair. The cart itself is nothing fancy. A wooden box on wheels, its sides stained a color you've stopped trying to identify. At one point, it might have been used to haul vegetables or firewood. Now it just hauls grief. You climb aboard, grab the reins, and start the slow journey down Fish Street Hill. London looks dead, even when it's awake. Shops shuttered, curtains drawn, streets that once bustled with shouting traders and gossiping washerwomen are now quiet, like someone turned the volume down on life. A few people peek out from behind cracked doors, watching you go past like you're the Grim Reaper's intern. You stop in front of the first house. The shutters are closed tight, but a cloth, white with a red X, has been tied to the door. A sign that someone inside has the plague, or had it. You take a moment. No one wants this part. You knock gently, 3 times. The door creaks open. A boy stands there, maybe 10, eyes too big for his face, like he's trying to see through the world. He says nothing, just points behind him. You step inside, your boots echoing on the floorboards. A body wrapped in a blanket lies by the hearth. A woman, young, still. Her hand pokes out from beneath the blanket, fingers curled like they're still holding onto something. You don't ask questions. That's not your job. With practiced care, you lift her into a rough canvas sling and carry her outside. The boy watches, doesn't cry. That stopped days ago. You lay her gently into the cart. One down, many to go. There's a rhythm to it now. Knock, wait, lift, load, move on. Some doors give you nothing but silence. Others open with pleading faces and hands that grip your sleeve too tightly. You learn not to flinch. You learn to nod solemnly, like you have some wisdom, when in fact you barely slept and haven't eaten anything except old bread and regret since Tuesday. Sometimes you get the living too, people too far gone to argue, too weak to stay upright. You wrap them in cloth, not for warmth, but for privacy. You stack them gently atop the dead, hoping they won't realize where they are until it's too late. And all the while, the bellman walks ahead of you, calling his grim refrain, "Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead." The echo of his voice becomes part of the cart's music: wheel, hoof, cough, cry. Historians still argue whether plague cart drivers were respected or reviled. You suspect the answer is yes to both. Some people thank you like a priest, others spit at your feet. You understand both. After all, you're the one collecting their futures, one corpse at a time. By midday, the cart is almost full. You pull your scarf higher, not because it helps with the smell, it doesn't, but because it gives you the illusion of distance. You pass a bakery with its doors nailed shut, a sign scrawled in Latin across the front. You can't read it. Doesn't matter. Nobody's baking bread anymore. And then, of course, the rats. Always the rats, scampering across the gutters like they own the place, which honestly, they sort of do now. You don't bother chasing them away. They always come back. You finally stop outside Bunhill Fields, where a pit has been dug the size of a house. The gravediggers wave you forward. They're the only ones who look worse than you. You begin to unload, one at a time, a silent parade into the earth. By the time the last body is lowered, the sun is beginning to fade behind the smog and ash of the city. You're tired, sore, empty. But you climb back onto the cart, because there's always another door. And tomorrow, it begins again. You didn't exactly dream of becoming a plague cart driver. In fact, back when you were still pretending this was going to blow over in a week or two, you were helping unload grain at the docks. Not glamorous, sure, but the worst thing you had to worry about then was slipping on fish guts or being yelled at by a man named Big Thomas who once bit a rat on a dare. Things were less apocalyptic. But now here you are, unofficially employed by the city to do the job no one talks about, unless they absolutely must: hauling the dead. It started because the previous cart driver, a lanky fellow named Merrick, simply stopped showing up. Maybe he fled to the countryside. Maybe he was in your cart last week. No one asks. No one even checks. You didn't volunteer exactly. You just didn't say no. And that was enough. The parish warden gave you a nod and a cart and told you to report at dawn. "Pay's irregular," he muttered, "like your health's about to be." Which, while honest, wasn't exactly comforting. They also handed you a small wooden tally stick, a kind of grim punch card for the deceased. You notch a mark for every body collected, like you're keeping score in the world's worst pub game. Historians still argue whether the city truly organized its dead collection system during the 1665 outbreak, or whether it was mostly held together by desperation and sheer human stubbornness. Your experience suggests option 2. There's no training, no briefing. Just, here's the cart. You know what to do. And so, on your first day, you do. You walk beside the cart, your boots squelching in mud that may or may not also be someone's former home. You pass neighbors who won't look you in the eye anymore. You knock on doors you've known since childhood and hope no one answers. Not because you're rude, but because an answer means someone's probably dying. You quickly learn the unofficial rules. Rule 1. Never go inside unless you must. Rule 2. If they're breathing, walk away slowly. Rule 3. Don't ask for names. You won't want to remember them. Your route covers Cheapside to Clerkenwell, a stretch of London that was once loud with sellers, tinkers, and alley-side gossip. Now it's mostly silence, broken only by the clatter of hooves and the occasional shout from a terrified housemaid begging you to take her mistress's body quickly before the flies get bolder. Some people try to bribe you. They want you to skip their door. She's not sick, they say, sweating, just fainted. You nod. You take the coin. You come back tomorrow. You tell yourself it's just a job. You're providing a service. You're doing something necessary, something brave. But at night, when you finally scrape the grime from your skin and sit on the edge of your bed, still in your coat because it's safer that way, you start to realize bravery isn't what's keeping you going, it's numbness. Bravery implies choice. You stopped choosing 2 weeks ago. You share lodging with a man named Oswin who sells miracle herbs by day and ferments questionable berries by night. He says the sweet smelling vinegar you dab under your nose is plague proof. You nod and keep using it, even though the only thing it's proven to prevent is your ability to taste anything. The truth is, no one knows what stops the plague. Not really. Some say it's bad air, miasma, which, if that's true, means you're doomed, since your job is basically full-time miasma exposure. Others say it's God's punishment, or maybe cats, or Protestants, or Catholics, or too much dancing. Historians still argue whether people really believed in these theories, or just clung to them out of raw, terrified hope. One fringe theory says rubbing a dead toad on your buboes will help. Another says you should carry a pouch of dried flowers in your hat to ward off death. You saw a man yesterday, with his hat stuffed so full of lavender, he looked like a walking bouquet. He was coughing blood. You've stopped laughing at these things. You get it now. People cling to whatever they can, even if it's a smelly toad or a herb bouquet, or the idea that someone like you might keep death at bay with a cart and a grim expression. What's stranger is how fast it all becomes normal. You stop flinching at the sight of purple welts. You start estimating weight by glance. That one's light. Probably a child. You hate that you can tell. You hate more that it doesn't make you feel anything anymore. On day 12, a woman insists on giving you a cup of broth in thanks. You accept, because declining would be rude. It's hot, salty, and probably has rat in it. You savor every drop. At the pit, the gravediggers have started playing games. One bets on how many bodies your cart carries. Another mutters limericks while tossing corpses. You wish you found it funny. You wish you could forget the child you carried earlier, whose toy wooden soldier fell from his pocket and clattered on the cobblestones. You left it there. Not because you're cruel, but because you couldn't bear to pick it up. You didn't ask for this job. You didn't want it. But the truth is, nobody wants to be a plague cart driver. They just become one the moment they realize they can no longer afford to be anything else. You get dressed like a man preparing for a flood, an execution, and a visit to the worst smelling pub, all at once. Your uniform, if you can call it that, is cobbled together from whatever you can scrounge, sew, or borrow from someone too dead to need it. There's no official plague cart outfit, no polished boots, or city-issued cloak. Just you, wrapped in an ensemble of desperation. First, the base layer, linen that's long stopped pretending to be white. Then the outer tunic, thick wool that clings to you like a clingy ex and smells about the same. You slap on your cloak, which was once waterproof, or at least water resistant. Now it just soaks up everything, including rain, blood, and the occasional unfortunate sneeze. Next comes the vinegar soaked cloth you tie around your face. It's supposed to protect you from the bad air, the miasma everyone's convinced is ferrying the plague from one wheezing soul to the next. Does it work? Probably not. But it does mean you spend your day breathing in a nose burning salad dressing mist, which feels like a choice between suffocation and infection. You choose both. Historians still debate whether these vinegar rags did anything beyond making everyone smell like a dying vinaigrette. One theory says they had mild antiseptic properties. Another says they just made you feel proactive while waiting to die. Then there's your prized possession, the beaked mask. No, not that one. You don't have the creepy, iconic plague doctor mask with the glass eyes and the long bird nose. That's reserved for the physicians and only the ones with enough money to dress like the Grim Reaper's weird cousin. Yours is a handmade attempt, cobbled from stiff leather and stuffed with herbs and crumbled rosemary someone swore would ward off illness. It makes you look like a disoriented bird thief and smell like a meat pie that's gone slightly off. The boots are borrowed, cracked, and 2 sizes too big. You stuff straw into the toes to keep them from flopping. They still flop. And gloves? If you're lucky. Most days, it's just stiff cloth wraps bound with string. You carry a stick too, not for walking, but for poking. You use it to pry doors open, lift covers off bodies, and occasionally ward off the very much alive who get a little too close. You've learned the stick is as much a psychological tool as a physical one. A little poke says, "Stay back. I'm not in the mood." You check your reflection in a warped pane of glass once, halfway through your shift. You look like a disaster and smell like vinegar-soaked despair. Your beard is patchy. Your eyes are ringed with exhaustion. Your mask is lopsided. And yet, you wouldn't trade it for anything, not even for a fresh shirt, because somehow, against all odds, it feels like armor. And when you're walking down the street in your full getup, you notice something. People cross the road when they see you. Mothers pull children inside, dogs whimper. You are the walking embodiment of death's middle manager, and you're treated with a mix of dread and reverence, usually reserved for haunted statues. A woman once offered you a flower, not out of affection, but as an attempt at magical protection. She believed that placing it in your cart might soothe the souls of the dead. You placed it under a corpse's arm, not because you believed her, but because it was the kindest thing you'd seen all week. Your clothing tells the city who you are, not by profession, but by curse. It says, "I go where others fear. I touch what others flee. I have seen what the rest of you are still pretending won't come knocking." And honestly, it does give you a strange sense of power. You walk the same streets every day, but now they part for you. Doors slam before you reach them. Windows shudder at your approach. Once, a preacher threw holy water at you from a balcony. Another time, a child pointed and whispered, "Is that what death looks like?" You wanted to answer yes, but you sneezed instead, through vinegar cloth, so it came out sounding like a haunted trumpet. As the days pass, your outfit stiffens with grime and memory. Every stain has a story. That brown streak? The woman in Clerkenwell who died mid-confession? That smear on the cuff? A nosebleed that wouldn't stop? The tear in your cloak? The dog who mistook you for something undead, and maybe wasn't entirely wrong. Laundry, of course, is a joke. You tried once, hauled everything down to the river, broke through the ice, and soaked your tunic for an hour. It froze solid in minutes, and the next day you cracked it in half, trying to put it on. Lesson learned. So instead, you layer filth upon filth. The outer grime becomes a sort of crust, a crust that, weirdly, makes you warmer. It insulates, seals in the heat, locks out the cold, and, let's be honest, people already avoid you. Smelling like death's chimney sweep is just part of the brand now. Some days you spot yourself in reflections, windows, puddles, shiny buttons, and you almost don't recognize the figure staring back. That hunched, bundled specter. That vinegar ghost. But you shrug, adjust your scarf, and keep moving. The cart doesn't drive itself. The streets of London used to sing. You remember that? Barely. Street vendors hawking eels and meat pies, women gossiping over wash lines, the clop of horses, the hiss of chamber pots dumped from upper floors, sometimes with a shouted warning, often not, and the constant gritty hum of life. It was noisy, filthy, smelly, and alive. Now, now the city feels like a paused painting. The air holds still, as if even the wind is waiting to see what happens next. You guide your cart through lanes that should be bustling. Fleet Street is lined with shuttered shops, their signs swaying gently in the breeze like sleepy pendulums. No apprentices running late, no arguing fishwives, just silence. And that silence is louder than any crowd ever was. The few people you do see are quick moving shadows. They dart from doorway to doorway, cloaks pulled tight, eyes low. No one lingers, no one chats. You used to know your neighbors. Now you just know the weight of their bodies. And yet, the city hasn't stopped completely. The bakeries still bake. Not often, not well. But bread is still made, sometimes burnt, and always fought over. The apothecaries still whisper promises through cracked shutters. Cures made of crushed pearls, pickled snake bits, or powdered toad. None of which, by the way, have worked so far. You pass a fountain once filled with clean water and cheerful children. Now it's green and stagnant, decorated with a single rat perched on the rim, like some kind of plague-themed garden gnome. You catch your reflection in the water and startle slightly. You look like a villain in a traveling puppet show, a bent figure behind a creaking cart. You reach up, adjust your mask, and move on. The cobblestones beneath your wheels rattle in rhythm. Clunk, 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 clunk. They used to echo with merchant wagons and clattering hooves. Now it's just you, and occasionally, the night watchman muttering to himself in Latin. Historians still argue whether 1665 London was more chaotic than calm during the plague. Some describe hysteria, riots, looting, wild sermons in the streets. Others say the city simply quieted, like it held its breath for months. You'd argue it's both. Beneath the surface silence, there's a buzzing panic. You can feel it in the walls. You pass by the alehouse, the 3 Tons, a place once overflowing with song and ale and very bad darts. Its doors nailed shut. Someone's written, "Stay out, Death In," across the front in white chalk. You briefly consider editing it to something wittier, but you don't have any chalk or the energy. A little further, and you come across something rare. Sound. A violin. It's out of tune, scratchy, and clinging to some barely remembered tune, but it's music. You pause. Peer down an alley. An old man sits alone, bowing gently across the strings with cracked fingers. His face is lined like a dried apple. He doesn't look at you, just keeps playing. You nod once, though he can't see. It feels like a funeral for the city, a quiet requiem for a place that's forgotten how to breathe. As you continue, You start noticing odd things: windows stuffed with bundles of herbs, doors painted with symbols, cats tied with ribbons. All attempts to keep the plague at bay, all futile. You spot a woman sprinkling salt across her doorstep. She catches your eye, freezes, then slowly shuts the door. You didn't mean to frighten her, but your presence is a warning now. You are a walking headline, a flesh and blood plague notice. People avoid you not because they hate you, but because you're proof that death still delivers house calls. And so you walk. You pass Smithfield Market empty, a place once brimming with cattle, sheep, shouting, and smells that made even butchers gag. Now it's a courtyard of ghosts. Stray dogs sniff the edges of the square. You toss them a crust from your pocket. They eye you with the same tired suspicion as everyone else. You round a corner near St. Sepulchre's Church, and there it is, a fresh chalkboard nailed to a door. I too gone, one hanging on, a tally of one family's losses, written like the menu of the day. Beneath it, a smaller scrawl: God help us. You don't knock. Not today. There will be time. The cart creaks behind you like an old man's knees. The wheels hit a rut, jolt to the side, and for a moment you worry they'll snap. But they hold. They always do. You wonder if the cart resents you. As dusk approaches, London changes again. The sky turns a dull orange as if the city is trying to blush after a long, shameful day. Smoke from countless hearths and countless pyres rises in ribbons. Lanterns flicker to life, but fewer now than before. Light feels like defiance these days. Most people don't bother. You pass by a familiar stoop. The twins used to sit there, red hair, always giggling, selling gingerbread that tasted like floor. The stoop is empty now, and the silence somehow louder than all the weeping in the world. By the time you steer the cart back toward your lodging, your feet ache, your hands are numb, and your soul feels like it's been sandpapered. But you made it. No one threw rotten food at you today. No one died mid-collection. A small victory. You unhitch Humphrey. He whinnies softly, either greeting or complaint. You feed him what little hay you've managed to scrounge. He accepts it without enthusiasm. Then you sit on the stoop, let your back press into the wood, and for a moment you listen, not for bells or screams or the roll of other carts, just for the silence. And in that silence, London breathes, barely. You knock gently, knuckles barely grazing the wood. There's no answer, of course. There never is. But it's the ritual. 3 knocks just in case. Maybe someone's alive in there, still hoping it's the baker, or the apothecary, or literally anyone but you. And really, wouldn't that be a nice surprise? To open the door and find a florist instead of a man with a cart full of corpses. The door creaks open on its own, hinges groaning like a bad joke. You poke it wider with your stick, breathing through the vinegar cloth, already bracing for what's on the other side. It's quiet inside, which you've learned is rarely a good sign. The air is stale, not just old, but still, like it's been holding its breath. There's a body on the floor, wrapped in a quilt that probably took someone years to stitch. Now it's just a burial shroud for someone no one had time to mourn. You check quickly. No signs of life, no movement, no breathing. Just a strange dignity of stillness. You slide your arms under the bundle, lifting gently. The body is light, too light. Probably a man who stopped eating days ago, if not longer. Maybe he stopped hoping too. You carry him to the cart and lay him down with practiced care, tucking the quilt around his shoulders, like you're tucking in a sleeping child. It's meaningless, but you do it anyway. Historians still argue whether plague victims were removed by force or with consent. The truth is, Most were past caring, and the ones who weren't usually didn't have the strength to argue. You go back in, just in case. Scan the room. There's a note on the table, scribbled in shaky ink. Gone to God. Please send for the dog. You freeze. Listen. And then you hear it. A soft, rhythmic whimpering. Under the bed. You crouch down and meet the eyes of a small brown mutt, tail curled tight to its belly. It doesn't bark, just stares. You reach out a hand, slowly, and it crawls toward you, shivering. You scoop it up, somehow heavier than the man you just carried, and tuck it inside your cloak. You'll drop it at the chapel steps later. Someone might take it in, or not, but you can't leave it here. You're not that far gone. Not yet. At the next house, the door opens before you knock. A woman stands there, early 20s, hair in a kerchief, eyes red from crying or not sleeping. Maybe both. She nods, says nothing, then steps aside. Inside, there are two bodies, a man and a girl, father and daughter, probably. They're laid out on the bed, hands folded like they're praying together. The room smells of lavender and death. The woman, maybe the wife, maybe the sister, starts to speak, then stops. Her lips move again, silently. You nod like you understand. She leaves the room. You take the girl first. She's still clutching a rag doll made from scraps of old linen. You gently ease it from her hands, place it beside her on the cart. The man comes next. He's heavier, and you grunt as you lift him. Your back will complain later. It always does. When you return inside, the woman is holding out a small pouch of coins. You hesitate. It's not required. Most people have nothing left, but she insists. You take it, not out of greed, but because refusing feels insulting. You thank her with a nod, then turn to leave. Thank you, she whispers. You pause at the door. No one says that anymore. Outside, the street is starting to buzz, relatively speaking. A few other carts rumble along side roads. A gravedigger lumbers past, dragging a spade behind him like a moody toddler. A priest stands on a corner, preaching to nobody. Repent. The Lord calls you home. You tip your head as you pass. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. You're both working overtime these days. You reach another house. No marker on the door, but the shutters are drawn. You knock once. Then again, silence. You push the door open and immediately step back. The smell hits you like a wall. Not just rot, but that sickly sweet stench of fever and filth and something worse. Neglect. Inside, you find three bodies. One of them is face down near the hearth, as if they'd been trying to reach something. Maybe water, maybe someone. You sigh. Long, deep. This is going to take a while. You wrap them one by one, doing your best not to think about it. It's easier that way. Focus on the folds of cloth, the weight, the balance as you carry them to the cart. By now it's almost full. 7, maybe 8. You've stopped counting, honestly. The tally stick lies at your hip, unmarked. You pull a sheet over the pile, out of respect, out of habit, out of the faintest flickering sense that this is still a society, not just a slow-moving collapse. You knock on the last door on the block. A child answers. That's rare. She can't be more than 6. Pale, hair tangled, cheeks sunken. She blinks up at you like she's answering the door for a postman. Says nothing. You kneel down. Is your mother home? She points. Inside, the mother is barely alive. Eyes glassy. Hands twitching. She's breathing, but only just. You don't touch her. You wrap the girl in your cloak. ignoring the mutt's gentle growl. The girl doesn't cry. She just curls into your side like a cat. You tell yourself she has a chance. Someone will take her in. Someone always does, right? The cart groans like it's tired of this life, too. Each new body you lay inside seems to make it sigh a little deeper. The wooden planks creak under the weight, not just physical weight, but the quiet accumulation of lives lived and abruptly ended. The cart is no longer just a tool, it's a rolling confession box, a mobile memorial, a splintering, four-wheeled monument to a city on its knees. You pull it slowly along the lane, hooves clopping steadily ahead of you. Humphrey, your long-suffering horse, trudges, with a look that says he's filed a complaint with the universe and heard nothing back. At some point, the sun disappears behind a dense, gray smear. Could be clouds, could be smoke, could be God putting his hand over London like a parent covering a child's eyes during the scary part. You glance back at your cargo. The dead lie layered like bundles of linen in a merchant's stall, some wrapped in sheets, others still in their night clothes, and one man in full Sunday best, suit, boots, and a hat, as if he had an appointment in the afterlife and wanted to look decent. They don't look peaceful. That's a myth, really. Most look like they went unwillingly, some with arms twisted mid-spasm, some with mouths open in a silent final complaint, a few with eyes that never closed. You tried to shut them once, but they always pop back open, so you don't bother anymore. Historians still debate the scale of the death toll in 1665. Some say 70,000. Others argue over 100,000. But here, behind your cart, you don't need numbers. You've seen it street by street, house by house, quilt by quilt. Every bump in the road rattles the cart and stirs the bodies. They shift against each other like restless passengers on a never-ending ride. You try not to think about it. Try not to picture hands sliding, heads knocking gently together. You just keep walking. You pass by a man selling something from a wooden stall, a bottle unmarked. You raise an eyebrow. He holds it up and shouts, "Protection, plague be gone, one sip, and you'll walk among the sick untouched." You nod, smile, because the last time someone offered you a miracle, it came in the form of a garlic and goose fat paste that burned the skin clean off your ankle. You move on. The bodies jostle again as the cart hits another rut. Sometimes you hum to distract yourself. Today it's a tune your mother used to sing while hanging laundry, a light melody about springtime and clean bed sheets. Now it just feels ironic. At a crossroads, two other carts pass you, going the opposite way. You exchange glances with their drivers. No words, just a nod. A shared understanding. Yes, it's still terrible. Yes, we're still here. No, we still don't get paid on time. Once you tried to count how many bodies fit in your cart. You gave up around 14. That was the day a body fell off the back and you didn't notice for 3 blocks. When you went back, a dog was sitting beside it, wagging its tail like it had found a new friend. You load the bodies carefully now. You've learned a kind of gruesome Tetris, heads at one end, feet at the other, stacked lightest on top. You once packed someone so tightly that you could feel their ribs creak through the cloth. You apologized out loud. It just felt polite. Today you have 12, maybe 13, if the woman in the blanket is more bones than she looks. The mutt under your cloak pokes his head out, sniffs the air, and curls back in with a whine. Even he knows what's coming. You reach the burial ground at dusk. It's not a churchyard anymore. Not really. Just a pit. A big, dark rectangle carved into the earth by men who stopped carrying around. Week 3. Gravediggers wave you over. One is eating bread, with his hands still covered in dirt. Another is singing to himself, something cheerful and off key. You stop the cart beside the edge. They nod. You nod. No words. You begin to unload. One by one, you carry the dead to the edge of the pit. The gravediggers take them from you, lower them in unceremoniously. There are no prayers, no names, no records, just bundles of former lives dropped into the earth like discarded laundry. You try not to look down too often, but occasionally you do. You see faces, half covered, eyes open, limbs askew. One hand reaches up from the pile, fingers stiff. You gently press it down before another body lands. There's a debate among the gravediggers today. One swears he saw a man still breathing after being buried last week. Says he came back the next day and heard scratching. Another laughs. Maybe it was a rat. No, the first one insists. Rats don't beg for forgiveness. Historians still argue whether people were ever buried alive during plague times. Some say yes, that the panic and haste led to premature burials. Others insist it's just ghost stories, old wives' tales spun from fear. You don't know the truth. You just know you've seen bodies twitch, eyes flutter, and once, a man who groaned as you lifted him. You left him outside the pit that day, under a tree. He was dead by morning. You finish unloading. Your arms ache. Your shoulders are on fire. Your gloves are soaked through. And your soul feels like it's been hollowed out and filled with wet ash. The gravediggers nod again. You nod back, and then you climb back onto the cart, now light as a whisper. Humphrey snorts. You click the reins, and the wheels turn once more. The mutt sleeps soundly beneath your coat, blissfully unaware. The girl in your memory does not. And behind you, the pit yawns wide, swallowing London piece by piece. Let's talk payment. Because yes, technically you are paid for this. In theory, on paper. Somewhere in the dusty, chaotic ledgers of London's overwhelmed parishes, there's likely a scribbled line that reads, Cart driver, 3d per corpse, plus ale. You have yet to see that ledger. Or the 3d. The ale? That part, at least, is consistent. Though calling it ale is a generous interpretation, more like murky brown water, with hints of regret and rat tail. Your salary comes in unpredictable bursts. One day, a well-off widow hands you a silver coin and a half loaf of barley bread. The next, you're paid with a jar of pickled onions and an awkward side hug from a man who smells like a fireplace and emotional trauma. One week, your most valuable reward is a candle stub wrapped in linen. Another, it's a prayer mumbled in Latin from someone who isn't sure whether to thank you or bless you. You take it all. Pride isn't part of the job description. Historians still debate whether plague workers were fairly compensated. Some accounts suggest cart drivers made decent money. Hazard pay, they called it. Others say most were poor souls desperate enough to trade health and dignity for a warm meal and the vague hope they'd survive to spend their earnings. You lean toward the second theory. A man tried to pay you once with a chicken. Live. Clucked the whole way home. You tied it to your foot while you slept and dreamed of better times. The next morning, it was gone. Stolen. You suspect Oswin, your housemate, who mysteriously had stew for breakfast. You didn't argue. It was hard to be mad. The broth smelled like actual nutrition. There was a day, last month, you didn't get paid at all. 3 cartloads, 18 bodies, and the only thing you walked away with was a sore hip and a vague sense of accomplishment. that you managed to avoid stepping in anything squishy. Another time, a woman pressed a string of beads into your hand. For luck, she whispered. You tried to tell her that your version of luck was a week without boils. She just nodded solemnly and shut the door. Now, whenever your shift ends, you head to the corner tavern. Well, the one that hasn't closed, burned down, or been converted into a makeshift infirmary. The barkeep, Harold, gives you a tankard of something warm. It may not taste good, but it numbs the tongue enough to make it irrelevant. Another long day? He always asks. You nod. He doesn't press. He never does. You sit by the fire when you can, when there's space, when there's not someone coughing into their elbow in that particular way. You stare into the flames and wonder how many bodies it would take to build a wall around the city. Too many, you decide, and too grim, even for you. Tonight, a toothless man with a lute is playing in the corner. His fingers strum slowly, his voice little more than a raspy whisper. The lyrics don't make sense. Something about a fox marrying a priest, but the tune is soothing in its nonsense. The mutt curls up at your feet. You toss him a scrap of something chewy, possibly bread, possibly cheese, possibly candle wax. He eats it anyway. You glance around. The usual crowd. A chimney sweep nursing a mug like it's a precious relic. A washerwoman with red hands and a 1,000-yard stare. Two boys in the corner arguing over who saw more dead people that day. You win, but you don't say it out loud. You realize you've become part of the background here. The regular with the cart and the vinegar stench. People nod when you walk in. Some even smile in that half sad, half respectful way. No one sits too close. You get used to that. After your drink, you wander back out into the night. The streets are quieter now. London at night isn't peaceful, it's nervous, like it's listening for footsteps that shouldn't be there. You hear distant coughs, a dog barking, the occasional shout from a night watchman who's had too much of something strong. You pass a man preaching on a crate. His eyes are wild, his beard tangled. The end is here, he cries. We are being judged. You raise a hand and keep walking. At your lodging, Oswin is snoring. Loudly. A good sign. It means he's alive. You peel off your outer layers, cloak, scarf, boots, and leave them near the door, where they can dry and think about what they've done. You scrape the grime from under your fingernails with a dull spoon and splash tepid water on your face. It stings. Your skin is raw from vinegar and weather and things better left unnamed. You collapse onto your straw mattress. It wheezes like a tired accordion. You stare at the ceiling. You wonder if there's a patron saint for people who haul corpses for beer. You imagine one. His name is probably something like Saint Wilfric the Overburdened. His symbol is a wheelbarrow. His relic is a splinter. You'd pray, but you're too tired. Besides, what would you even ask for? More bodies? Fewer? A better cart? Maybe just a fresh shirt? You didn't think you could get used to the smell, and yet here you are. It's not that it stops bothering you. It's more like your nose throws up its hands, sighs deeply, and stops reporting to work. After a while, your brain just files it under permanent background trauma and tries to focus on more immediate concerns, like avoiding puddles that might contain former people. But the smell is always there, lingering in your clothes, your boots, your hair. You catch it on your fingers when you bring them too close to your face. It seeps into everything like a bad decision made physical. People cross themselves when you walk by, not for you, but because of what you represent. They're not praying for you. They're praying against being you. You once overheard a child ask, Mom, Why does the corpse man smell like onions and sin? You took it as a compliment. It meant your vinegar rag was doing its job. Historians still debate whether the plague had a distinctive scent. Some say it was the sickly sweet reek of rotting flesh and sweaty fever. Others insist it was the smell of despair, less physical, more psychological. You say it's both, plus a generous splash of rat pee. Let's be clear, this isn't just bad smell. This is an existential smell, the kind that wraps around your soul and whispers, you could have been a carpenter. The worst part? It clings, no matter how much you scrub, and you've tried everything from lye to lemon peels, you still smell like you sleep in a compost heap, and people notice. A woman you once fancied from across the tavern pinched her nose and said, "You smell like grief in a bucket." You never flirted again. There are tricks: rubbing herbs into your skin, hanging garlic around your neck, standing downwind of the tanneries. Yes, that's considered an improvement. You even tried rolling in flower petals once, like a very sad wedding guest. Didn't help, just made you smell like a funeral with bad catering. The mutt doesn't mind. He's still curled under your cloak most days, breathing in your rankness like it's a comforting campfire. You've named him Soot because he's small, black, and always where he shouldn't be. Soot is the only creature in London who greets you with enthusiasm. His tail wags when you come near. He doesn't flinch from your touch. You suspect it's because he's lost all sense of smell. Lucky beast. One day, you pass by a perfume shop that's somehow still open. The sign outside reads, "Scents for Surviving." You step inside, curious. The perfumer eyes you like you just walked in with a shovel and no pants. "You're brave," he says. "No," you reply, "just nose dead." He offers you a vial of something floral and expensive. You dab a bit behind your ears. It mixes with your existing aroma and creates a chemical war in the air. You leave quickly, out of kindness. There are moments, small, cruel moments, when you forget how you smell. You stop to speak to someone, and they take a step back. You reach for a loaf at the market, and the vendor flinches. Then you remember, and it stings all over again. One evening, you return home to find your housemate Oswin sprinkling dried rosemary around the room. He doesn't even pretend it's for decoration, he just shrugs. "It helps," he mumbles. You try not to take it personally. You've learned that the stench doesn't just follow you, it becomes you. People stop referring to you by name. You're the cart man, the death hauler, the vinegar ghost. You hear a child once say, "Don't get too close. He'll make you smell like dying." Lovely. Still, every morning, you try. You rinse your hands. You change your linen. You even chew parsley because someone said it freshens the breath. Probably doesn't, but you do it anyway. Why? Because somewhere, buried deep under the layers of rot and resignation, there's still a version of you who once had a clean shirt and a decent smile, and you're not quite ready to bury him in the pit just yet. You try not to take the smell home with you, but of course you do. It lingers in your bedding, your blankets, your walls, your dreams. Some nights you wake up gagging, not because the air is worse, but because your nose finally remembered what it was supposed to do. And yet, strangely, the stench becomes familiar. Not friendly, but familiar. Like a terrible roommate who never does the dishes, but pays half the rent. You hate it. You live with it. Sometimes you even miss it when it's gone. One day, you pass a churchyard and smell nothing. No rot, no smoke, no spoiled meat. Just the crisp scent of rain on stone. You stop, breathe deeply. It's so unfamiliar it scares you. Soot sneezes. You take that as a cue to move on. The moment passes, the city closes in again, the smell returns, and so do you. You start to notice something strange. Even as the carts roll, the bells toll, and the pits yawn wider, there are people who go about their business. Not many, but enough to make your eyebrows twitch under the vinegar soaked rag. Take the baker, for example. He's still opening shop every morning, like the plague respects routine. You pass by, and there he is, dusting flour over what may or may not be actual bread. You suspect the loaves are made of chalk and optimism, but people line up anyway. Or the seamstress near Blackfriars. She's still advertising spring fashions, despite it being summer, and despite half the city dressing in little more than morning cloaks or damp regret. You once saw her fitting a woman for a funeral gown, while the customer coughed into her elbow and asked for more lace. And the pub. Oh, the pub. The Shouting Mutton, as it's cheerfully known, never actually closed. Sure, they hung a sign that said, closed for fumigation, but 5 hours later it was back to warm ale and terrible fiddle music. You suspect they just lit a candle and called it chemistry. Historians still argue whether people truly denied the plague's severity or if they simply refused to let death ruin their Tuesday. Either way, it's bizarre, comforting, terrifying, like watching someone host a picnic in the middle of a battlefield. You once walked past a group playing dice in the alley behind the apothecary. One man was bleeding from the nose, another was missing two fingers. They were laughing. One yelled, "Best roll gets the last turnip," and no one questioned the prize. You see couples sneaking kisses behind closed shutters, lovers meeting under stairwells. One man proposed to his sweetheart in front of your cart. You offered to take their wedding portrait with a handful of dried rose petals and a grim nod. They declined. Children are the strangest of all. They treat the plague like a story their parents tell to keep them from running into the street. You once heard a little boy yell, "Bring out your dead," in a sing-song voice while skipping rope. His sister replied, "Not yet. I'm playing dolls." You didn't know whether to laugh or sit down and cry, so you did neither. You just kept walking. There's something resilient in it. That dogged refusal to stop living, even as everything decays. But it's also unsettling, like watching a play continue after the theater has caught fire. A man tries to sell you roasted chestnuts one afternoon. His cart is wedged between two boarded up homes and smells faintly of despair and burnt sugar. "Good for the lungs," he cries, "wards off the plague." You buy one, not because you believe him, but because it's warm, and you haven't tasted sweetness in days. It burns your tongue slightly, and you cherish the pain. At Smithfield, you see a preacher gathering a small crowd. He's reading from a tattered Bible, voice rising and falling like a storm-tossed ship. "This is our test," he shouts, "a trial of faith." The crowd nods. A few weep. One woman faints, possibly from belief, possibly from hunger. You slip away before he starts asking for donations. Later, you spot a street performer balancing a chamber pot on his head while juggling turnips. No one claps, but he keeps going. You begin to wonder if the city's sanity is leaking out faster than its population. Denial, you decide, is the last comfort. When you can't stop the dying, you bake bread, you sell perfume, you play fiddle tunes for rats, because doing something feels better than standing still. Oswin, your housemate, agrees. Well, people don't want to think about dying all the time, he says one night, sipping something that smells like fermented nail polish. If you're going to go, might as well go after a pint and a bad joke. He's not wrong. You've seen a man keel over mid-laugh, saw another keel over mid-loaf. The plague doesn't care if you're serious or silly. So maybe silly is the rebellion, and you, plague cart driver, smeller of horrors, ambassador of bad news, you walk through it all, watching people stitch joy into the frayed edges of disaster. You begin to see things differently. That woman sweeping her stoop, she's not in denial. She's claiming her space. That fiddler in the alley, he's not ignoring death. He's drowning it out. And you, dragging your creaking cart, are part of the rhythm now. One wheel in despair, the other in defiance. One day, someone shouts your name. You freeze. No one calls your name anymore. Not since you started hauling the dead. It's a boy. Scrappy, freckled, barely 10. You drop your tally stick, he calls, holding it aloft like a prize. You take it, thank him. He grins. Do you count them all? You nod. Do they count you back? You blink, say nothing. He runs off before you can answer. That night, as you notch another line into the wood, you wonder if he's right. Maybe the dead do count. Not in numbers, but in memory. Maybe the reason you keep going is to make sure they're not erased completely, even if the city seems determined to forget them before they're gone. You start dreaming about bells. Not the pleasant kind, mind you, not wedding bells or Sunday chimes echoing through cobblestone courtyards. No, these are sharp, piercing, insistent. The kind that rattle in your ears long after you wake up. The kind that say, another one's gone, and another, and another. At first you think it's just your imagination, but then you realize they're real. The bell ringers, hired by the city, or perhaps just by rumor, they walk the streets ahead of the death carts, ringing their handbells, shouting warnings. Bring out your dead. Have mercy, Lord. Plague cart coming. They're part herald, part omen, part very loud morning alarm. You never asked for a bell ringer. You were doing just fine without one. But one morning, there he is. A boy, maybe 12, skinny as a broomstick and twice as loud. Name's Caleb. Doesn't say much, but he rings with gusto, and he walks just ahead of you, swinging that bell like he's auditioning for a particularly tragic musical. The sound pierces alleys, startles cats, and lets everyone know exactly what kind of day it's going to be. Historians still debate how common bell ringers really were. Some records say they were city funded. Others suggest they were just orphans who figured out they could yell for money. Either way, the tradition stuck, because nothing says impending doom like a small child enthusiastically waving a brass bell. You try to ignore it, but you can't. That bell slices into your thoughts. Every time it rings, someone else peeks from a window. Every time it rings, a door creaks open with a cautious face behind it. Every time it rings, someone somewhere exhales and says, they're here. It makes the job faster, sure. No more knocking. People hear the bell and just leave bodies outside, like taking out the trash. A bundle on the stoop, a wheelbarrow under a sheet. Sometimes labeled, sometimes not. One note says simply, we loved her. Another says, we didn't. But she's still ours. You read them all. You shouldn't, but you do. Caleb, for his part, never comments. He just rings and walks and occasionally hums between rings. Cheerful little tunes that feel wildly inappropriate and, somehow, exactly right. You try to get rid of him once. Tell him to go home. Tell him it's not safe. Tell him you don't need help. He looks up at you and shrugs. No one at home, and keeps walking. Soot, your mutt, seems to like him, which is surprising since Soot distrusts everyone except pigeons and Oswin's leftover soup. But Caleb gets tail wags, even a lick once, which is rare affection from a dog who once growled at his own reflection. You start to depend on the bell. You hate it, but you depend on it. It clears the way, warns the living, announces the inevitable. At one house, the bell draws out a group of children who've made a game of guessing which house is next. They cheer when they're right. It's horrible and perfectly logical. Children make sense of horror by pretending it's a contest. You walk on. The bell rings. One day, you ask Caleb why he does it, why he follows you around, why he volunteers to shout and clang and march in front of death's chariot. He thinks for a second, then says, "Feels better than hiding?" You nod. Yeah, you get that. Some mornings, he's late. You worry something's happened. But then he shows up with a bruised cheek and a half-eaten apple and says, "Got stuck behind the fishmonger's cart." You don't ask for details. Other days, he's quiet. Too quiet. You catch him looking at the bundles in the cart. His eyes linger. His fingers go still. You know the look. It's the look of someone waiting to see someone they know. So far, he hasn't. Or if he has, he hasn't said. You catch yourself humming his bell rhythm when you're not working. Ding ding. Ding 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 ding. It's like a morbid lullaby now. An earworm from the apocalypse. Oswin says it echoes in his dreams. Tell the kid to ring in tune at least. He grumbles over his mug of boiled questionable herbs. But the truth is, you'd miss that bell if it stopped. It's become part of your life now. Like the cart, like the gloves, like the smell, and like all of it. It's terrible and necessary and somehow comforting because when the bell rings, it means you're still here, still walking, still working, still not in the cart, not yet. One morning, you wake up to quiet, which, in Plague-era London, is rarely a good sign. No bells, no creaks, no distant coughing. Even Soot is unusually still, curled at the foot of your straw mattress like a furry comma, punctuating your uneasy sleep. You sit up slowly, joints popping like poorly made clockwork. Oswin's blanket is neatly folded. That's odd. Oswin doesn't fold anything. Not shirts, not opinions, and certainly not bed linens. You find a note, just one word. Sorry. You know what that means. You check the usual spots. The pantry, the back stairs, the alley. No Oswin. No boots by the door. No mug on the table. And in the corner of the room, his coat, hanging perfectly still. Historians still debate why so many plague workers disappeared without record. Some say they died quietly, unnoticed. Others claim they fled, unable to carry the burden any longer. You think it's both. Some run, some crumble, some simply vanish. Like the fog off the Thames, you grab your coat, your stick, your gloves. You skip the vinegar rag today, partly because the smell has become redundant, partly because you need a reason to gag now and then, just to feel something. You pass by the baker's shop, still open. The loaves are flatter than usual. You don't ask. The bell doesn't ring ahead of you. Caleb hasn't shown. You hesitate, consider waiting, but the work doesn't wait. You pull the cart yourself. The streets feel heavier without the bell's cadence. No warning, no rhythm, just your own footsteps, and the slow creak of wood and wheel echoing off the empty walls like a song with no tune. The first house has a white cloth hanging in the window. That's the new code. The old system of chalk crosses was getting too depressing, so now it's linen. You knock, no answer, you knock again. Out of habit, not hope, you enter. Inside, the air is dense, like walking through grief. The room is dim, quiet, untouched. Three figures lie on the floor: a mother, a father, and something in between. A child, maybe, wrapped so tightly you can't tell. You do what you always do, gently, efficiently. You load them into the cart. 1, 2, 3. No one watches. No one whispers thanks. The walls stay silent. Back outside, the wind kicks up. Dry, dusty, hot. Unusual for London. It feels wrong. Like summer doesn't realize this isn't the time for brightness. As you move on, you notice something new. Chalk drawings. Children's drawings. On doors, on bricks, on the ground. Little stick figures. Flowers. Cats. One very confused looking horse with 3 eyes. Soot barks softly at that one. It makes you stop. You smile. Just a twitch. And then you hear it. Far off. Ding. 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 You turn. And there he is. Caleb. Covered in mud, hair windblown, holding the bell like it's Excalibur. He doesn't say anything. Just falls into step beside the cart and resumes ringing like he never left. You don't ask. He doesn't explain. Some things just pick up where they left off. The sound of the bell carves through the city once more. A woman peeks from behind her shutters. A man throws a bundle of rags over a railing. A dog howls from a rooftop. You keep walking. At the next stop, Caleb pauses. "This one's mine," he says. You freeze. He pushes the door open. You follow slowly. Inside is a single room. One bed, one blanket, one bundle beneath it. He doesn't cry, he doesn't speak. He just stands there. You kneel beside the bed, carefully lift the bundle. It's small, light, still warm. You don't ask if it's his sister or his brother or someone else entirely. You just carry the bundle to the cart and place it gently between 2 others, tucking the edge of a blanket over the face. Caleb rings the bell once, sharply, then once more softer. Then he walks on. You follow, cart creaking behind. The sun is setting now, casting long shadows that stretch across the cobblestones like reaching fingers. You step carefully, as if not to wake them. At the pit, the gravediggers are quiet, tired, sunburned. They nod. You nod. Caleb watches this time. Doesn't flinch, doesn't blink. When the last body is laid in, he says, "Tomorrow I'm bringing flowers." You don't laugh. You don't tell him they'll wilt. You just say, "I'll bring a jar." The flowers are pitiful, but sincere. The next morning, true to his word, Caleb arrives carrying a bundle of weeds, daisies, and something that might be celery. It's unclear whether he picked them from a garden or liberated them from an unattended market cart. You don't ask. Intent counts more than provenance these days. You bring the jar, an old pickling pot once filled with onions, now scrubbed clean and vaguely smelling of vinegar memory. You fill it with water from a pump that gurgles like it resents still being useful. At the pit's edge, Caleb places the bouquet gently, between the churned earth and a crooked cross. Someone hammered in last week using a shoe. The gravediggers pause to watch. One nods. Another wipes his nose with a sleeve. It's a quiet moment, tender, slightly absurd, just like everything now. You resume the route after that, bell in hand, cart behind. The day unfolds in its usual grim rhythm. Knock, wait, lift, cover, roll, repeat. But something's changed. It starts with a woman who hands you a note instead of a body. It says, "We've gone north. If you find my brother, tell him we loved him." You tuck the note into your coat. You're not sure why. It's not addressed to you, but it feels important. Like maybe the act of keeping it helps her words live longer. At the next stop, a man offers you a cup of tea. You decline, politely. Then he drinks it himself. Fair enough. At another, someone's drawn a smiley face in chalk on their door. "Is that optimism?" Caleb asks. "Or madness?" you reply. "Maybe both." You start to notice more little gestures. Someone ties a ribbon to the cart's handle. Someone else pins a small brass button to a body's wrappings. A child hands you a drawing, crudely sketched, but clearly you, complete with a bell, cart, and Soot the dog, wearing a cape. You tape it to the side of the cart with wax. Caleb calls it your business logo. Historians still argue whether morale in plague-stricken London truly collapsed or merely shifted shape. Some records speak of hopelessness, mass despair. Others mention gallows humor, impromptu parties, and bursts of human kindness in alleyways and taverns. You'd argue that both are true. Misery and meaning tend to hold hands. Oswin returns. One day, without warning, he's just there, sitting on the step, peeling a turnip with a very small, very blunt knife. He looks up as you approach. "Had to leave," he says. "Things got noisy inside." You don't ask what that means. You sit beside him. He offers you half the turnip. It's raw and unpleasant, but you eat it anyway. Sharing food, even terrible food, feels like a victory. Soot hops up between you. Caleb leans on the post nearby, swinging his bell idly, like he's practicing for a concert in purgatory. "Did I miss much?" Oswin asks. "No," you say. "Just most of it." You all sit there for a while, not talking, just existing, in the kind of silence that's heavy but not crushing. The next day, a woman stops you in the street. She doesn't look sick, not quite, but there's something in her eyes, a distance, a tilt toward the edge. "My husband's inside," she says softly. He he won't let go." You hesitate. "Won't?" "He's still alive, but barely. I think he's waiting for someone or something." You follow her in. The room is dim, lined with lavender bundles and melting wax. A man lies in the bed, eyes sunken, breath thin. He's clutching a handkerchief. His lips are moving. You lean in. He's whispering names, one after another. Some you recognize, some you don't. He opens his eyes, looks at you. You don't say anything. What could you say? He exhales slowly and doesn't inhale again. You close his eyes gently. The woman nods. "He was the last one," she says. You lift him carefully, carry him out. Caleb waits by the door with the bell lowered. Back at the pit, the gravediggers have started laying branches at the bottom. "Helps with the smell," one explains. Another says, "Keeps rats from chewing too soon." You wonder if they mean it literally or if it's just something to say. You lay the man down on the bed of branches, cover him, step back, and for some reason, you whisper his name aloud, just once. It feels good, right? Like confirmation that he wasn't just another number on your tally stick. That night, you find yourself writing names. Not all of them. That would be impossible. But the ones you remember. On scraps of paper. On the inside of your coat. On bits of firewood. Anywhere you can. They're crooked, misspelled, smudged. But they're there. Proof that they existed. That they were here. That someone saw. That someone still sees. Rain again. Not the soft, misty kind that politely settles on your shoulders and makes the world feel poetic. No, this is the biblical kind. The sky opening up and pouring out a week's worth of bad decisions onto your cart, your boots, and your soul. Your cloak, already more mildew than fabric, drinks it in like a thirsty sponge. Soot huddles under the bench, ears flat, tail curled around his own toes like a miserable pastry. Caleb, ever the stoic, holds the bell above his head like it might ward off divine judgment. It does not. The cart groans more than usual, the wood swollen, the wheels sinking into the ruts of mud and misery. You slip at least 3 times before the first stop. The street looks like it's melting. Historians still argue whether the infrastructure of Plague era London contributed to the spread: narrow alleys, open sewers, buildings stacked like books on a drunken shelf. You'd argue yes. Loudly, possibly with hand gestures. Water flows through the lanes like it's trying to wash the city away. It might be doing you a favor. At one house, you're met by a woman holding a bucket. Not for the dead, just to catch the leak in her ceiling. She nods toward the back room. He went quietly, she says. Didn't even make it to the groaning stage. You take him with care. The floorboards squish under your boots. He's wrapped in a rug. A good one, by the looks of it. You consider asking if she wants it back, but her eyes are already closed. Caleb rings the bell once. Just once. It feels too loud in the rain. You cover the cart with an oilcloth that leaks anyway. The bodies below are stacked like fallen chess pieces, unmoving, damp, anonymous. You catch a glimpse of a girl's hand, small, pale, nails painted with soot, a detail that makes you pause. She tried to stay herself until the end. You tuck her hand under the cloth gently. At another house, a man insists on carrying the body himself. My brother, he says, we worked together, drank together. He owed me 3 shillings. You don't argue. You walk beside him as he staggers under the weight. At the cart, he places the body down and whispers something in the dead man's ear. Probably not rest in peace, but it counts. You offer him the bell. Caleb hesitates. The man takes it, rings it once, then hands it back. His face is unreadable, wet, red-eyed. But he stands straighter as he walks back into the house. Sometimes grief needs an action. At one point, you stop under an overhang to wring out your sleeves. A cat watches you from a windowsill, dry and smug. You tip your hat. It does not return the gesture. Soot sneezes. Caleb offers him a piece of something that might be bread or wall plaster. He eats it anyway. By midday, the city looks washed out. Literally. Paint runs from shutters, ink from signs. Everything is the color of sadness and chimney smoke. You see people slipping. You help too. One thanks you. One spits and says, "Don't touch me, corpse man." Charming. You dry your hands on your cloak and keep walking. At the burial pit, the gravediggers are knee-deep in sludge. One has fashioned a rain hat out of a broken chamber pot. He wears it with pride. Better than nothing, he says. He's wrong, but enthusiastic. Today the pit bubbles. That's new. Gas from the bottom. One gravedigger mutters. Body's cooking. You try very hard not to visualize that. Instead, you focus on the task. Unload, one by one. Soggy wrappings, dripping limbs. The occasional tragic splash. You mutter names under your breath when you know them. When you don't, you assign them quietly. Robert, Agnes, maybe Henry. It feels better than saying nothing. The gravediggers finish with speed, practice, detached reverence. One lights a pipe that refuses to stay lit in the rain. He curses at it. The pipe ignores him. You offer them the rest of your flask. They share it without thanks, but they nod. That's enough. On the way back, Caleb's bell slips from his hand and lands in a puddle. You both stare at it. Well, he says, guess it's baptized now. He pulls it out, shakes it dry, and keeps ringing. You love this stupid kid. As you reach home, a rainbow threatens to appear, just a sliver of color trying to sneak between storm clouds. It looks embarrassed. It fades quickly. Inside, Oswin is asleep, face down on the table, breathing into a bowl of half-eaten soup. You cover him with a towel. He'll wake up, confused and slightly damp, but alive. You peel off your coat, your boots, your gloves. Your hands are wrinkled from the rain, and not for the first time, you realize they look old. Older than they should. You light a candle. The room smells like wet dog and wax. You sit, you rest. You survived another wet, weary day, and so did the bell, and the cart, and the names you whispered. And tomorrow? Well, there will be more. The streets begin to empty in a new way. Not the chaotic, screaming kind of empty like the first days of the plague, and not the hushed, fearful silence of a community holding its breath. This is something else. A kind of tired emptiness, like the city is sighing. You walk past shuttered shops. Their signs faded, doors bolted, some with boards, some just ajar, as if the owners left mid-sentence and never got to finish whatever they were doing. A loaf half kneaded, a letter half written, a chair pushed out like someone planned to return. But they didn't. You don't need to knock as often now. The houses that still hold the living often display it. Candles in windows, voices, the smell of food or something trying to be food. The rest? Dead quiet, which is a terrible phrase you wish you could stop using. Caleb's bell feels louder in these moments, echoes longer, rings hollower. Even he notices. It feels like we're announcing ghosts, he mutters one morning. You nod. He's not wrong. Historians still debate whether the Great Plague began to slow due to weather, quarantine, or sheer exhaustion of its hosts. But in your experience, the city seems to stop feeding it. The sick die faster. The healthy stay hidden. And death, greedy and impatient, begins to get bored. You don't, though. Your cart still fills. Slower, yes, but steadily. Enough to keep your shoulders sore and your soul a bit softer around the edges. One afternoon, you pass the Shouting Mutton, still open, still serving, still awful. Inside, a man plays a dirge on a violin that's seen better centuries. You sit for a drink, unbothered by the vinegar cloud that follows you. No one moves away anymore. They're used to you, or they no longer care. Oswin joins you halfway through your pint. He smells like onions and old arguments. I heard a rumor, he says, sliding into the booth. They're digging a trench the length of a street up by Clerkenwell. Can't keep up with the pit space. You nod. You've seen it. A trench, like a scar, cutting through the cobblestone. Some say it's for drainage. Others know better. Caleb arrives with soot trailing behind, tail low, feet muddy. He flops down beside you with a theatrical sigh. Bell's chipped, he announces. I think it's tired of me. You take it from him. The edge has a small crack, barely visible, but there. A tiny imperfection in a very loud life. You hand it back. Still rings, you say. He grins. Like me then. There's laughter. Genuine, light. And then silence again. As the violin plays its final, wobbling note and the barkeep clears his throat like he's about to say something profound, but decides against it. Back outside, the air feels different. Cooler, cleaner. Not much, but enough that you notice. You catch a scent that isn't smoke, rot, or vinegar. It takes a second to register. It's bread. Real bread. With crust. From someone's oven. Somewhere. You stop walking. Caleb stops too. You smell that? He nods, eyes wide. It smells alive. You follow it briefly, just to see. You find the source, a small house, door open, window cracked. A woman inside lifts a loaf from the fire. She sees you, smiles. Just a little. You tip your hat. She nods. No words. It's enough. You return to the cart. The bell. The route. But something's shifted now. Hope, maybe. Or delusion. Or maybe just the idea that life has started leaking back into London's bones. Later that day, you find yourself at a house with two bundles outside, but only one is still. You lean closer. The smaller shape moves, barely. A breath, a flicker. You shout. Caleb runs. You both lift the blanket gently. Inside, a boy. 6, maybe 7, pale, thin, alive. You carry him inside, wrap him in dry cloth, feed him broth. Oswin swears was made today. He drinks, sleeps, breathes, and you realize this is new. You're not just collecting the dead anymore. Sometimes, rarely, you get to save the living. You sit by the hearth that evening, soot on your feet, Caleb polishing the chipped bell like it's made of gold. Oswin reads aloud from a book he found under someone's floorboard. Bad poetry, worse grammar, but beautiful in its absurdity. You listen, because for the first time in months, listening feels possible again. Outside, the wind doesn't howl, it hums. And somewhere, faintly, someone is laughing. You wake to sunlight, real sunlight, not the gray, filtered version that sneaks through smog and misery, but golden warmth that cuts clean lines across your floorboards and makes the dust dance like it has purpose. You blink at it for a full minute, suspicious. It feels unnatural, optimistic, borderline rude. Soot is already at the door, tail thumping, nose twitching at the unfamiliar scent of knot mildew. Caleb is sitting cross-legged in the middle of the room, inspecting the bell with the reverence of someone tuning a sacred relic. Think today'll be different? He asks. You don't answer. You don't want to jinx it. You pull on your coat, which is slightly less damp than usual. Your boots creak. The cart, when you open the door, doesn't groan. It simply waits. The streets are brighter. Less ash, less fog, and curiously, more people. Not many, mind you, but here and there, cautious shapes emerge. A child kicking a ball, a woman hanging laundry with a prayer on her lips, a man playing a lute so badly that even the crows take offense. You and Caleb glance at each other. Something's easing. Historians still puzzle over when exactly the tide began to turn. Some point to late autumn, when the rats seem fewer and the fleas less frenzied. Others credit the weather, the lockdowns, the dwindling number of infected hosts. But if you had to pinpoint the exact moment you felt the change, it was that morning. When you reached your first house, and there was no body, just a chalkboard hung from the door. All well today, thank you. You pause. Read it twice. Touch the words like they might crumble. Caleb grins, rings the bell softly. Not as a warning, but as a greeting. The day moves differently. You still find the dead. 3 to be exact. One old man, one infant, one person whose age you cannot guess because time seems to have melted their features. But between those, you find other things. Laughter in the market. Fresh bread for sale. Expensive but undeniably bread. A fiddler on a corner, playing not a dirge, but a jig. Badly, but with heart. You pass a preacher who isn't shouting, just humming. You're not sure that's better. The gravediggers at the pit look almost bored. One is carving something into the wall of a nearby shed. When you lean closer, you realize it's a tally of good days. The last mark was a week ago. Today he adds a new one. Feels different, he says, shrugging. Can't say why. Just does. You nod? It does. Caleb runs ahead while you unload. When you catch up, he's found a bird's nest tucked under the eave of a bakery. 3 tiny eggs, trembling with the promise of trouble. They're still trying, he whispers. Then louder, You think birds get the plague? You shake your head. If they do, they handle it better than us. Back at the cart, someone's left you a gift. A small parcel, wrapped in cloth, no note. Inside, a heel of cheese, a twist of dried apple, and a scrap of paper with the word Brave written in shaky ink. You don't cry. You eat the cheese, share the apple, keep the word. By mid-afternoon, the cart is nearly empty. The bell chimes now and then, not a dirge, but a rhythm. Almost like music. A child waves from a window. You wave back. You realize this is the first time you've made that gesture in months. At the end of the route, you don't return home immediately. You walk. No purpose, no corpse, just motion. Caleb tosses the bell from hand to hand, whistling some half-tune he probably invented. Soot trots ahead, sniffing everything, like he's rediscovering a world he forgot. You pass the flower woman, the one who vanished months ago. She's back, arranging wilted but defiant daisies on a crate. She looks up, nods once. Still here, she says. So are we, you reply. When you finally return to your corner of London, Oswin set out chairs. Actual chairs. Outside. For sitting, he explains. In the sun, like animals. You all sit, you bask. The city isn't healed. Not yet. But it's breathing. You lean back. Watch the clouds shift. Hear distant hammering. Someone rebuilding a door. Perhaps. Or just hitting wood out of sheer joy. You can still smell the city's wounds. But underneath that, earth, bread, smoke from a friendly fire. And as the sun dips behind the roofs, you realize something extraordinary. You don't hate the sound of the bell anymore. There's a rumor going around that the king might return. You nearly choke on your stew when Oswin mentions it, casually, like he's commenting on the weather or the price of leeches. Caleb looks up from cleaning his fingernails with the chipped edge of the bell. Return, you ask? From where? Oswin shrugs. Hampton Court, or Oxford, or somewhere with fewer dead people. Caleb frowns. Why would he come back now? Public morale. Oswin says, stabbing a potato with authority. Or maybe he just misses London fog. Some people find it nostalgic. You're not sure whether to laugh or roll your eyes. Instead, you sip your broth, which tastes vaguely like ambition and root vegetables. The idea of the monarch returning feels surreal, like inviting a guest to a party that's still on fire. Historians still argue whether Charles II's return to the capital had any real impact on the end of the Great Plague. Some say it was symbolic, a reassurance to the people that life could resume. Others insist he waited until it was safe, like a cautious guest arriving late to avoid cleanup. You suspect it was a bit of both, and perhaps a desire to reclaim the throne and his tailor. The rumor sticks with you, though. As you walk your route the next day, you start to notice signs of a city trying very hard to clean itself up before company arrives. Windows are being scrubbed, shop signs repainted. One man is sweeping his doorstep with a branch, muttering, he'll want to see pride, not plague. You want to ask who he is, but you don't. Caleb rings the bell with a bit more flourish now. like he's announcing not just the cart, but the possibility of change, of return, of a city remembering itself. You pass a school where a teacher is actually teaching, again, three wide eyed children reciting numbers with more gumption than accuracy. Their chalkboard reads, today's date, someday in hopeful times. Not entirely accurate, but certainly more cheerful than Wednesday, probably. The death toll has slowed. You know this not because someone announced it, but because your cart is lighter. Your arms ache less. You no longer dread corners the way you once did. Some doors still bear the linen cloth, but fewer each week. One house leaves you a cup of tea. Another, a hand-drawn thank you, signed from the still not dead. You tack that one to the side of the cart. Caleb adds a flower. Soot licks it. The sentiment holds. You reach the burial pit just after midday. It's smaller than before, not just in use, but in ambition. The gravediggers are filling it now, their shovels moving with methodical relief. One of them whistles. Another jokes that he might finally go back to shoeing horses. You help them lower your final burden of the day. A woman in her 40s, clean linens, no note, just a pressed flower pinned to her chest. You wonder who placed it. Caleb doesn't ring the bell this time. He simply bows his head. You all do. Back on the road, you pass a group of apprentices painting over a sign that once read, Plague House, do not enter. They're replacing it with something more optimistic. Open soon. Watch this space. The audacity of hope in block letters. You don't know whether to feel pride or concern. The Shouting Mutton is hosting poetry nights now. Morbid but metrical, the sign says. Tonight's reading, Ode to a Rat, who left me too soon. You politely decline the invite. Caleb tries his first joke of the day just as you round a corner. What do you call a plague cart driver with no cart? You raise an eyebrow. He grins. Unemployed. It's terrible. You laugh anyway. Even Oswin chuckles when you repeat it, which for him is essentially applause. The evening ends with something rare, quiet contentment. Not the exhausted silence of collapse, but the kind that hums softly between people who've survived something unspeakable and now share a bowl of soup and a thin blanket and a dog who won't stop shedding on everyone. Later, before sleep, you take out the tally stick, the one you've used all these months. You count the notches. Too many. Then you flip it over. On the blank side, you carve a new mark. Just one. You don't label it. You don't have to. It means something else now. You dream of clean sheets. Not silk. Not linen soaked in vinegar. Just dry, warm, honest sheets that smell like sun and soap and nothing else. You dream of crawling into them, pulling them over your head, and forgetting what a plague cart even is. Of course, you wake up to soot sneezing in your face. Reality remains uncompromising, but something has shifted. The city isn't healed, but it's healing. Like a deep wound finally starting to scab, raw and tender and weirdly itchy. Caleb arrives with a loaf under one arm and a satchel full of something clinking. Found a coin purse, he says, grinning. Left it where it was. Took the bread instead. You nod. That's the morally responsible version of theft. He bows. You set out later than usual. Not because you're avoiding the work, more because it's become less urgent. There are still dead to collect, but now they wait quietly. Sometimes, even with a note that says, We'll be home after dusk. Kindly leave Uncle George with respect. You oblige, always. The bell rings less. Caleb prefers to knock now, when possible. It feels gentler, more human. Today's route takes you along the northern edge of the city, where new buildings rise like hopeful sprouts through cracked soil. Carpenters shout, horses stamp, someone's hawking pots that look suspiciously like recycled helmets. Historians still argue whether the city's regrowth began before the plague truly ended. Some claim London began rebuilding too soon. Others believe reconstruction was a form of resistance, a defiant middle finger to entropy. You believe both. People rebuild not when they're ready, but when they've run out of excuses. At one house, a woman hands you a letter. Don't open it, she says. Just make sure it ends up with whoever takes my place. You place it in your coat pocket. There's a new weight to that coat these days. Letters, notes, tally sticks, small kindnesses that sag the seams. At another door, a man waves you away. She pulled through, he says proudly. Turned the corner yesterday, eating again. You nearly hug him. You don't, but you think about it. The cart is nearly empty by the time you reach the old churchyard. There's a priest there now, new face, young, beard like a soggy cat. He's planting rosemary. Remembrance, he explains. You nod. Nice. And fleas hate it. You nod again. Nicer. Caleb places a daisy beside one of the older pits. You add a button. It came from your coat, but it's been trying to escape for weeks. It's earned its freedom. On your way back, you pass a group of boys kicking a leather ball. Don't touch it if it rolls into the gutter, one shouts. I'm not stupid, another yells. You watch them for a while. They're playing where bodies used to lie. The street remembers, but it forgives. You stop at the market square. Real fruit today. A pear. Slightly bruised, but unmistakably a pear. You buy one. Give half to Caleb. He eats it like it's forbidden fruit. Think this means we survived? You shrug. We're eating a pear. That's survival in edible form. Aswin greets you with something he swears is stew. You suspect it's revenge, but you eat it anyway. That evening, you sit under a sky that looks almost clean. There are stars, real ones, not sparks from someone's chimney, but actual celestial fireballs that don't care one bit about human tragedy. Caleb falls asleep mid-sentence. Soot dreams, paws twitching. Oswin snores like a dying accordion. You stay up a little longer, carving another notch into the stick. Not for a death this time, for the day itself, for the bread, for the rosemary, for the pear. You don't know how many more there will be, but you're finally counting them too. It begins with a knock at your door. That's rare. Usually, if someone wants you, they shout from the alley or throw a rock at your window. Knocking implies courtesy, and courtesy hasn't exactly flourished during the plague. You open the door to a man in a clean coat. Not fancy, just intentional. His boots are polished. His beard is trimmed. He looks like someone who bathes on purpose. You're the cart man, he says. You nod. I have a proposition. You brace for something absurd, like hauling a body across town for a wedding display, or posing with the dead for a family portrait. Stranger things have happened. Instead, he hands you a parchment, an invitation, Registry of Services and Workers for the Restoration of London, requesting participation. You blink at it. He smiles. We're rebuilding, and we'd like your expertise. You stare at him. You're inviting a plague cart driver to help rebuild the city? You know the streets, he says simply, better than anyone. You want to laugh. Instead, you nod. He leaves, just like that. Caleb reads the invitation aloud later, dramatically, as if it's a royal decree. Oswin pretends not to care, but keeps asking where his name is. Soot chews on the corner of the parchment and is promptly banned from civil service. The next day, You walk the streets differently, not just looking for cloth markers or bundles on doorsteps, but for cracks, broken beams, weak bricks. You start mapping the skeleton of the city in your mind, where the bones are fragile, where the joints still move. Historians often note how swiftly London began its transformation after the plague. Roads widened, houses redesigned, wells covered, latrines, well, not improved exactly, but rearranged. Some credit central planning, others think it was just survivors doing what survivors do: build something that makes the pain mean something. You begin taking notes, literally. You sketch alleyways, mark dangerous overhangs, even draft a new cart route that would avoid the worst slopes on rainy days. Caleb helps, naturally. His sketches are mostly stick figures and a suspicious number of pigeons, but he's earnest. You're surprised how much you care. At one point, you visit a familiar house. Months ago, you took 6 people from that doorstep. Today, there's laughter inside, music. Someone burns something in the oven, and it smells like salvation. The woman who opens the door doesn't recognize you. That's a blessing, honestly. I'm part of the city's rebuilding efforts, you say. She nods. About time someone fixed the roof. You smile. Back in the square, the shouting mutton has been rebranded. The whispering turnip. Oswin hates it. That's not even a thing, he mutters. But the new sign is charming, and someone's planting a herb garden in the back. Inside, people read poems that rhyme on purpose. There's even a cat now. Caleb names it Plaguey, which is promptly vetoed. You attend your first meeting, not for bodies, for blueprints. You sit in a room with bricklayers, carpenters, seamstresses, and 2 deeply opinionated chimney sweeps. Everyone smells slightly better than usual. You offer your maps, your observations, your deep, inconvenient knowledge of which alleys flood and which ones fill with rats faster than a sausage cart left unattended. Someone takes notes, someone else offers you a job. You'd supervise sanitation, they say. You blink. Sanitation? Basically, stop things from smelling like a corpse's diary. You consider. Then you say yes. You go home that night dazed, a little hopeful, a little terrified. You're not just surviving anymore, you're becoming useful. It's strange. Soot approves. He wags his tail at the mention of your new title: Assistant Inspector of Public Sanitary Infrastructure. Oswin paints it on a board above your door. The letters are uneven. The meaning is not. Caleb insists on a celebratory dance. It mostly involves waving the bell and pretending to be the mayor. You let him, because why not? That night, you lie awake thinking about roads, about walls that lean wrong, about windows that trap smoke, about what it means to repair. And you realize something. You're still carrying people, just not the dead. Now, it's hope, and maybe a hammer. Your hands still remember the weight of bodies. That never really goes away. No matter how many bricks you lift now, how many broken beams you stabilize, how many cobblestones you realign, your palms still feel the echo of limbs gone limp, the delicate balance of carrying without dropping, without disrespect. But now your hands also remember other things. The heft of a spade used for planting, not burying, the texture of clean rope, the burn of a hammer's handle after a long afternoon fixing window frames. You've become versatile. Your days start earlier now, oddly enough. There's less dread to wrestle with before rising. The cart remains parked in the corner of the yard, draped respectfully with canvas. Wheels oiled once a week. It hasn't been used in days. You still glance at it, like an old friend or a shadow you've outgrown. Caleb's grown too. Not taller, just louder, cheekier, more likely to offer opinions no one asked for. This week he's decided to be a chimney sweep. Next week, maybe an architect. Either way, he's keeping the bell. Just in case, he says, just in case. You don't argue. Aswin's taken to writing a memoir. He calls it I Slept Through the Plague, mostly. A cautionary tale in 7 soups. It's appalling and probably unpublishable. You read every page. The city around you changes by the day. Walls go up. Streets widen. New signs appear above doors. Some old ones return, painted fresh. Words stenciled proudly. Butcher, weaver, hope. Historians still marvel at how London reinvented itself after the plague. Whole neighborhoods restructured, building codes enforced. For the first time in a long while, public health meant more than just blaming bad smells. You're part of that now. One morning, you're asked to inspect a new drainage route. It runs beneath an old street you once walked daily with the cart. You remember the uneven stone, the house with the red shutters, the corner where soot used to pause and sniff the air. As you walk the new path, dry, level, thoughtfully sloped, you feel something unexpected. Pride. Later, you stop at that house with the shutters. The shutters are blue now. New owners. There's a child on the steps, drawing with chalk. She looks up at you, waves. You wave back. She goes back to drawing. It's a flower. You think about how many flowers you've seen lately. Real ones, painted ones, drawn on doors, stitched into scarves, tucked into windowsills. It's like the city has decided to plant beauty in every crevice death once occupied. You pass a church bell being rehung. The sound when they test it is deep and round and alive. You feel it in your ribs. At the tavern, the Whispering Turnip has added music nights. Oswin plays the spoons. No one asked him to. Caleb dances. Soot howls. You sit in the corner, drink in hand, watching strangers laugh without flinching. The air still smells of smoke and dust and people, but there's yeast now, soap, wood polish, something like cinnamon, even if it's just cleverly burned sugar. You walk home slowly that evening, past alleys that once echoed with bells and now ring only with the clatter of carpenters, past doorways once marked with death and now festooned with bunting, past ghosts. They nod to you, you nod back, because they were here, and so were you. You reach your door. Above it, the crooked sign Oswin painted still swings slightly. Assistant Inspector. You consider repainting it, but maybe not just yet. Inside, the fire is warm. The stew is edible. The company is mismatched but loyal. Before sleep, you run your fingers over your tally stick. You add a final mark. Not a death, not a name, just a line. To say, this chapter ended. Tomorrow will be something else. You no longer wake with dread. That alone feels like a miracle. The cart stays in the shed now, beneath a canvas and a layer of dust that feels ceremonial. Caleb still rings the bell once a week for maintenance, he claims, though you suspect it's to keep the memory honest. Each time it chimes, you feel something in your spine. Not fear, not sorrow, just memory, vibrating gently. Today begins like most days lately, with Oswin yelling about porridge. It's too hot, he complains. You just made it, you remind him. It's aggressively hot, he insists, blowing on it with the dramatic flair of a man personally betrayed by oatmeal. Caleb enters with a loaf tucked under his arm and a puppy trailing behind him. Not Soot, he's still very much the unchallenged king of the household, but a small speckled thing with oversized ears and a talent for eating string. I'm naming him Pestilence, Caleb says proudly. You stare. Joking, he adds, too late. You eat breakfast outside, not because it's fashionable, but because you can. The air smells like dust and dandelions and distant bakery smoke. There's a breeze that doesn't carry ash. Sunlight lands on your collarbone like a blessing you didn't know you were waiting for. You walk your new route through a new city. The same streets, but different now. The angles feel friendlier. The corners don't bite. Windows have curtains again. Some even have flower boxes. At the rebuilt square, a statue is going up. You ask who it's for. The unknown helpers, someone says. Not soldiers, not saints, just folks who stayed. You blink, nod, walk on. Historians still argue about how cities remember plagues, monuments, memoirs, statistics, sermons. But in your experience, memory is messier than marble. It lives in jokes told too late, in streets you still avoid, in faces you pass that carry echoes you almost recognize. You pass the Whispering Turnip. It's hosting a gratitude night. Oswin's reading from his book. You can hear his voice from 2 blocks away. Chapter 4. Why Leaks Are Not Bandages. You do not go in. You walk instead to the edge of the city, where stone turns to field, and field turns to maybe. Caleb joins you halfway, whistling a tune he swears he didn't invent. You let him believe that. Soot follows. So does the puppy, now named Buttons, because Oswin vetoed famine, and you agreed. You sit under a tree that shouldn't have survived the summer, and yet here it is. And here you are. You close your eyes. You remember the weight, the names, the silence. But you also remember the daisy, the painted sign, the chalk flower, and the day the bell rang, not in warning, but in welcome. You survived. You helped others survive. You helped a city remember how. And now you rest. The cart is still. The streets are quiet now, not with fear, but with calm. That rare hush that comes not from dread, but from peace, from completion. You lean back in your chair, feeling the last of the daylight brush your face. It's warm, gentle, almost shy. The city exhales around you, timbers creaking in contentment, shutters clicking shut for the night, footsteps fading into safe corners. Soot is already asleep. Caleb dozes nearby, bell clutched loosely in one hand. Oswin snores from inside, his porridge cooled at last. And you? You just breathe. The worst has passed. The stories remain. So do you. Your hands, once heavy with grief, are now simply hands. Still rough, still marked, but free to hold lighter things. A cup, a pen, a hand that needs steadying. You let the quiet carry you now. Let the sounds of a rebuilding city soften into a lullaby. Wood tapping on stone, water murmuring down cleaner streets, a lull of laughter in the distance. No shouting, no bells, only breath, only rest. And as your eyes grow heavy, you whisper the names one last time, not with sorrow, but with gratitude, because they were here, and because so were you. Sleep now, you've earned it.